when you go over the Bob Lazar story, like what are you? How much of you cries bullshit? How much of you's like,
I'm more on the side. I think he's the most credible whistleblower because he
didn't profit from
didn't
it.
profit, and they prosecuted him for running a prostitution ring,
Which maybe he was.
which I think he was. He pled down to pandering, but
they also raided him during the Jeremy Corbell documentary. While they're filming the documentary, the FBI raided his facility, and they said they were looking for something, and supposedly he has a version or a sample of stable element 115.
What?
That's supposedly. Yeah, and that's supposedly what they were looking for.
Well, of course.
Supposedly he had gotten that from the lab, and when he was at S4, and that he had managed to smuggle out a stable chunk of this element 115. And there was a video that George Knapp had from back in the 80s where Lazar was demonstrating how this stuff bends light and, what it does, like it has weird effects.
How soon after that raid was 115 is now called Moscovium? How soon after that raid was 115 synthesized? I think it was synthesized in Russia.
Synthesized by a particle collider, and so the when they got it is a very temporary, quickly dissolving form, but they proved its existence. And supposedly, what Lazar is saying, wherever these beings are from, they obviously have a completely different environment, and they have a stable version of this element.
Yep.
And this element is crucial to this gravity propulsion system. That it's a part of this reactor. It gets bombarded with radiation, produces this gravity field, allows you to just slingshot through the universe.
I don't know. Are they working to stabilize it? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, man.
Why would they raid Bob Lazar?
That's that spectrum of believability again.
Exactly.
Here's a guy who's being attacked and tormented.
In the middle of filming the documentary. You know the Nixon story with Jackie Gleason?
I know that Gleason was into UFOs. Tell the story.
The story is Gleason got into UFOs because him and Nixon were drinking one day, and Nixon was like, "You want to see some shit?"
I wish I was drinking with that.
Can you imagine? And then he takes him. He flies him out to wherever the base is and shows him a crashed UFO and these bodies that they have in freezers.
And it was Wright-Patterson?
I do not know. I don't know if Jackie Gleason ever said. The story came from Gleason's wife, and it was an article in some sort of a magazine. But then there's the house that Gleason built in upstate New York that looked like a UFO. Like Gleason built a home. Yeah, that was like a disc.
I'm going to look into this. It's such a good story. I wonder where they went.
Reportedly would have been in Homestead Air Force Base. It might be in Florida.
In 73.
I think that's where they were when they were playing golf.
Embalmed. Was reportedly shown embalmed bodies of 4 alien beings. Dun, dun, dun.
So Nixon exposes the UFOs to a civilian, and then it does not go well for Richard Nixon after that.
Well, I think what went badly for Richard Nixon was that Richard Nixon was inquiring as to who killed JFK, and he said he thought he knew, and he was kind of talking about it publicly, and they're like, okay.
Yep.
And they had already, brought in Gerald Ford, kicked out Spiro Agnew. They got rid of him. Gerald Ford, who was also in the Warren Commission report.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, Nixon and Watergate happens.
Nixon, the most popular president of all time.
Of all time. And it turns out that Bob Woodward was actually an intelligence agent, and this is his first project ever.
Operation Mockingbird.
And then the people that were involved in the break-in, all FBI.
G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah, the whole thing is a coup.
All was a coup, all was a setup.
Yeah. And we're all parroting, Nixon was a crook. That guy was a crook. He was this or that. Like, they did a great job. The PSYOP was wonderful.
I'm a patsy.
Yeah.
They say it over and over.
Yeah. It's all really, really interesting stuff. But it's just, what it boils down to with stuff like your show, like how much is real? And when you have these mysteries, one of the amazing things about mysteries is you're never going to run out of topics.
No.
There's so many of these things.
And as long as there's a U.S. government, I'm good. As long as the CIA exists.
They're always going to be hiding something. But the fun ones are always the alien ones. That's the most fun ones. The alien ones and the ancient civilization ones. What is your take on Bob Lazar?
Well, we looked into the Bob Lazar story, and but only, from a certain relatively superficial level. Looked at, we found out what his clearance levels supposedly were and so on, which came back saying it was not high enough to be doing what he says he was doing. On the other hand, it may just simply be, it was better than that, but we didn't have the access to see that. So when I hear his physics descriptions, it's a puzzle. It seems not exactly as I would anticipate might be the technology behind the craft, but I can't absolutely write him off. So it's an enigma, and I don't have any hard data to prove one way or the other. So it's I know you've talked to him. And,
it's a fascinating puzzle.
It is a fascinating puzzle
because that would be the place. S4 would be the place where they would do that kind of work. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that in complete privacy and secrecy, you'd do it in the middle of the Nevada desert, very protected.
That's true. Right.
Outside of Area 51.
So even when people that have high clearances go and say, well, tell me about this. What's behind this? Who knows? If it's a special access program, an SAP, it might be, say, no, we're going to tell you that, he didn't do anything of significance here. In fact, he might have done something of significance. There's just no way of telling from the outside.
Yeah. So the actual generator, the thing that powers the craft that Lazar talked about, what was your take on that? This idea that it was element 115, that when it encounters high radiation, it has some sort of an anti-gravitational effect, some warp effect.
Well, there are two aspects. One is, what is the material or mechanisms that generate the effects? And then the other is, are the effects being described reasonable descriptions of the kind of effects you think are associated with such craft? On the element 115, as you know, in the general scientific community, we've seen element 115, but it's very short-lived. So it's hard to evaluate that, and at this point, there's no evidence that's it.
So it was we should explain to people, it was theoretical at one point until they detected it using, was it a Large Hadron Collider or another particle collider?
Right now, I think it was a particle collider in Soviet Union or in Russia.
And it's very short-lasting.
Yeah.
But the idea is that what Lazar was in possession of, or what the craft was powered by, was some sort of a stable version of element 115.
That's what he says. So, in general, it was known that, and predicted, that there was an island of stability, as we call it, on some of these higher elements in the periodic table that are beyond uranium and so on. But really no data predicted as to what their lifetimes would be. And so element 115 is in that bunch, and when he first discussed it, it hadn't been seen yet.
Or this is way back in 1989.
Way back, that's right. But eventually that element was detected, although the version of it that was detected had a very short lifetime. But of course, there may be some other isotope of that element that could have a long lifetime. Who knows? So it's just hard to evaluate. So it sits in my gray box, as I say. But his description of the anti-gravity effects and so on, that's an area that is well described as what you might expect.
Now, I'm not believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that that it was my own doing essentially that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online, or the Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. The Wilson Memorandum. Use of human volunteers.
No.
No,
that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document specifically?
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting, and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get Special Access Program access to all of these different things like reverse engineering programs. So in this document, they talk about it. I believe that this document, the person that went was employed by Robert Bigelow, one of the guys that has a couple of orbiting satellites and all that stuff.
He's the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch.
No, he's not. No? He was the guy that owned Skinwalker.
Okay.
Yeah, he used to own it. There's a new owner, and I interviewed him for my other film, but there's a new owner, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. But there's stuff that you'll be hearing about Skinwalker Ranch soon because there's a new owner. Anyway, the whole point of this insertion here is just that document kind of validates a lot of this idea Bob just said, that they make a little progress, then they can't go anywhere. They tuck it away, and then they bring it back out 10 years later and start working on it. What is the limiting factor? I think Bob should speak on this, but it's the material science.
Yeah, it's really where physics is. So I can see them doing that. I mean, I didn't have any information on that, but I think what George uncovered is probably accurate. That we try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock going, we really can't figure it out. It's just friggin' wait, put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and a decade later, let's take the project out again and see. All right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got your people that you compartmentalize. You got these people working on this
there
project.
has to be some people that know everything.
You've got security, and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, hey, we need people to guard this building. Don't let anybody in for 10 years.
I think a lot of that is private industry, and I think that's how they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is in control of private industry.
What private industry? Some aerospace company, something.
I don't know.
Yeah, they wouldn't. The admiral wouldn't name it in the car
Right.
in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they still have these things supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have you ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea of where they got them or how they got them?
No, but something must have been said to me from Barry, but it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what was said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
That'd be a great Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
Right?
As all of it would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
as
tripped me
all-
out when he said that for the first time.
Yeah. That's a freak out right
Yeah.
there. Just a couple of dudes with some brushes looking for a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone. They
And-
hit metal.
And when did they find it? You know, that they have 9 of them.
Yeah.
Well, and how could we have not heard about that? What about the guys with the brushes? How could
Yeah.
you uncover something like that? And
Well, Joe's newspaper at home does. I mean, they said it on that first day.
Oh, you mean the Roswell
Yeah,
Billy
yeah, the
record?
one you told me. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cover. What is this here, Jamie?
This is the document, but I had to do some digging to find it.
Yes, it's just kind of, yeah, so this is where they meet at EG&G, and this is Admiral Wilson, and there's a lot more coming out. Now, I want to be clear, George didn't put this out. He didn't leak this out to anybody. This is, I can tell you how
Who
I...
recorded this conversation?
So this was an employee of, at the time, Robert Bigelow.
And this is in 2002?
Right. Do you remember when he had that government contract called OSAP the world all knows about now, and he had NIDS that studied the ranch? So that $22 million, everybody is saying it was for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The $22 million was for OSAP that was pushed through Congress, 3 congressmen, right, an astronaut. It was pushed through. And that's what that $22 million, by the way, they spend more money on Viagra every year than they do studying UFOs if it was just this program, which I think is funny.
They probably
In the
make a lot
military?
more money from Viagra
They
than
probably
they
do.
from UFOs, too.
Well, you never know how it seeds into population. But anyway, this program, this is what was the mother program. So it got the $22 million. And really, it was to study Skinwalker Ranch. Oddly enough, that $22 million all was inspired by the phenomenon they were seeing at Skinwalker Ranch, because the scientists, they're seeing vehicles come through like a space in the sky.
Yeah, we went there. I went there
Right,
with Duncan.
yeah,
we interviewed a bunch of people that seemed full of shit, but a couple that didn't. It was very, very interesting.
Totally. And if you look, I spent a lot of time in the area. I'm not talking about those stories. I'm saying there were scientists hired by the government, right, through Bigelow to study the ranch because they thought it was important. And, you know, whatever. The point is that $22 million was to study that. Then we have ATIP, which is like an auxiliary kind of program of military sightings, like Commander Fravers and that sort of thing. This document is just one of those things that has now come forward that through the Bigelow studies, it was government funded, and then it was personally funded and then government funded. It's just one of those things that kind of shakes you because you got this military guy who can't get access because of the private industry that's holding these non-terrestrial materials, that they can't study it.
If you enjoyed today's episode on JRE Plus, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.